Welcome, baristas. Good to see everyone here. Could I get a raise of hands if you are a barista or have been a barista? Raise of hands. Amazing. Raise of hands if you have never been a barista. That's totally fine. You came to the right place. Thank you for being here. There are more handouts in the front here. Please help yourself if you like. Our speakers today have well over a decade of working in coffee. They met at Sower's Harvest Cafe. They helped to start multiple cafes through their cafe consulting company, including at least one in India. They were also very helpful in helping our cafe, Old Market Coffee, start a few years ago, and we're very grateful for them being here today. Please help me welcome Brenden and Danessa Kilmer.
All right, welcome everyone. So this is sort of, we've done a lot of training. I've never actually done a session like this before where we're passing. So sort of meeting everyone at the level you're at might be a little difficult, but this is supposed to just basically be the fundamentals of espresso and coffee in general. Yes.
Jerry mentioned, there are more class handouts up here on the stage. If anyone needs them, feel free to come grab that. Also, if we run out of paper copies and you would like the notes, we've got the QR code up there you can scan to get the handout.
And also with that, if you'd rather save, we have a couple at the end of your notes. There's like a resources section. Could be good. There's sort of some YouTube channels we recommend. Just some different links there. So we sort of meant the handouts to be a bit of a resource. I also lined the back page to make writing easier for note-taking if you wanted it. All right, so I'm going to start with walking through just sort of the journey of coffee, sort of the tree to the cup, basically. I have a few pictures up here just to help us visualize what we're talking about. So, obviously, I think most of us know coffee is a plant. That is something that's easy to forget when we're mostly operating with basically the seed from the cherry from the plant. But that is sort of important to remember that you're dealing with a fruit. It's alive, it's active, it's changing. So this is a picture of coffee plants. Obviously it starts by planting. And often this process will begin with soil preparation in a farm, especially if it's a new coffee growing area, getting the soil to the right pH for growing coffee, and then raising the seeds. They'll for the first I'm not sure how long, but basically till the plant is strong enough to survive, they'll raise it in nurseries, sometimes just under canopies, and then they'll plant it in sort of lots throughout a farm. So you'll have one section that they'll plant, and then those sort of cycle throughout a farm. It'll have different lots that are at different levels of maturity. So next, we go to harvesting. And so I'm mostly talking about specialty coffee here. There is commodity coffee that is strip picked just with machinery. They come through and you get the green coffee, the ripe coffee, all goes in together, just gets processed because it's going into Folgers or McCafe or, they don't really care. They just want to get it out as quickly and efficiently as possible. So we're talking about specialty coffee, most of which, with the exception of Brazil and some low-altitude countries, is done like that, with someone actually going to each cherry and picking it. So very labor-intensive. This is the anatomy of that cherry that they're picking. So you can see in the middle, what we're talking about as a coffee bean is actually 1/2 of the seed in that cherry, with the exception of some kinds, like a pea berry is one where those two halves are rolled together. So after they're picked, they are processed. I have more detailed notes in your notes. It's more detailed. I'm not going to go over all that info because I don't want to lose you all yet. So there's a natural process, but basically what's happening in all of those, the sugars are breaking down. They're removing the cherry from the seed and getting that seed dried. So whatever method they use to get there. So that's the drying phase. It can be just laying it out in beds. There's, again, a lot of different variation to that, which is not what we'll talk about today. We sort of jumped a big step there. This is a warehouse in New Jersey. I took this picture actually on one of this is where some of our coffee actually came from. So this has already made the journey from whatever origin it came from. If you stop by the Shepherd's Cup table out there, we have a natural Ethiopia. So clearly that had to go from Ethiopia to the coast, usually Djibouti, where that's shipped from, loaded into shipping containers, shipped to the U.S., unloaded in Newark, and then we pick it up. Since we're in Brooklyn, I sometimes have it shipped, sometimes pick it up. And the bags are anywhere from 150 to, I think some sources will package in slightly larger, 180 pounds of green coffee in each bag. And that warehouse goes on and on. It's a lot of coffee. And so this is a pallet this is our Shepherd's Cup in Brooklyn. We have just have to roll them all down the steps into our basement. So sometime maybe we'll have a separate roastery where we can wheel them in on pallets, but this is the process. We haul it off the pallet, unload it, and this is our roaster. So this picture was a little bit, that's actually not just the slide, it's a little out of proportion, but I liked it because if you see the bucket on the far end, that's green coffee that I have weighed out to go in. Inside the roaster, there's coffee being roasted, and then in the pan in the front, there's roasted coffee. So it's sort of the whole process there. Basically, we're using heat to transform the coffee from green into roasting. We're drying it out for the first step, and then we're basically developing the sugars, the acidities, getting it to a balance point where we have the elements we want and have not introduced the harsh or burnt elements yet. And then to brewing, which is sort of the high-profile step. So then we have, we're basically, whatever brewing method you're using, you're adding water to the ground coffee, and you're extracting the compounds that are within that coffee. You're pulling that out into your water that you're going to drink. Really, really basic definition. And I think that is that on that section.
Yeah, so coffee is amazing, makes a huge journey to come to us, and this class is mostly about the nuts and bolts of how do we prepare coffee, what do we do as baristas, but it's important for us to understand, I think, where coffee comes from so that when we're working with it, we can appreciate the journey it's been through, the other people who have handled this, and we get the privilege of being the ones to serve it and present it. So in working on the bar, being a barista, there's some basic terminology that we're going to use. There's some tools that we're going to use. So we're going to go through some of those. We've got a sketch up here of an espresso machine and surrounding tools. By the way, the scale is a scale and the tamper is a tamper. We have them switched around for some reason, and we realized that after we already made the presentation. So I think it might be correct in your handout. So we've got some basic parts. We've got the espresso machine, the group head, which is where the water comes through, the portafilter, which is where you put your ground coffee to pull the water through for espresso, steam wand, where you're going to be steaming your milk, steam pitcher, which you're going to be putting your milk in to steam it, a tamper to pack the espresso into the portafilter, espresso grinders, obviously digital scales so we can be weighing and making sure we're taking exact measurements and getting accurate results. Some terms. So the puck is espresso grounds that are packed into your portafilter. That's the coffee puck. Dose is what we used to refer to the amount of espresso, so amount of ground coffee in your portafilter when you're making a shot. Yield is the amount of finished espresso that you get out. So the amount of water you pull through, you get like that amount of finished espresso in your shot glass. That's the yield. And then ratio is how we talk about dose compared to yield. So what you put in compared to what you get out, that's your ratio. Extraction is the percent of original coffee grounds or the percent of the puck that dissolved into your water, into your espresso shot. Then there are varying degrees of extraction, such as if we have a weak espresso shot, that's going to be a low extraction. What happened there probably is the water passed through the puck too quickly or unevenly, and the shot is going to be kind of sour and thin tasting because there aren't enough of the coffee solids that ended up in that finished shot. A really strong espresso or high extraction will be when water passes through the puck maybe too slowly. It makes a really bitter, dry tasting, really harsh espresso because there are too many of those coffee solids in the shot. And of course what we're aiming for is the perfect middle ground between like a really high extraction, really low extraction, or other terms that people might use would be under extraction, over extraction. Those are maybe not quite as helpful, but we want an even extraction that sort of hits that perfect middle ground of, you know, how much do we want in our espresso. So Brenden is going to walk through the basics of espresso. What is it and how do we pull a shot?
Right, so it's basically the same setup on the actual picture. So I don't have a pointer, so I'm not going to necessarily, go through. We also talked about having an espresso machine up here, but logistics. So I'm going to start out with the defining espresso, because that actually, even that basic of a term can be confusing. So it's not a roast level. If you see a bag of coffee marked espresso roast, probably don't buy it. So it's not a roast level, it's not a bean variety. You don't have to use beans from a certain origin. It's not a flavor profile, like this is what espresso is going to taste like. It's a brewing method, a very specific one. So essentially espresso is produced by forcing hot water from mid 190 degrees Fahrenheit to 205 degrees Fahrenheit through a tightly packed bed of very finely ground coffee at high pressures. And that produces a small, concentrated, intensely flavored beverage. And what makes espresso unique is the combination of concentration and pressure. And it's not just strong coffee. So if you use a mocha pot, the stovetop espresso maker, you can get something that tastes a bit similar, but that would be more strong coffee because it's basically using some pressure from boiling, but not much. And that's why you can never quite mimic the shot of espresso like they would be pulling out here on this machine, is because it does not reach the pressures that we need. And why we need those is that is what creates the suspension of coffee particles and the emulsified oils that give espresso its body and texture and the crema on top. Without that high pressure, you're not going to get those things. It won't have that, what we call body. It won't, a shot of espresso should feel different on your tongue than a strong coffee. You can actually feel those coffee solids. And then, of course, the crema. Crema gets a lot of attention. I know a lot of people they pretty much judge the shot solely on crema. So what crema is, that golden layer on top, which is really important for latte art. And if you're not getting crema in your shots, there is something wrong. So there is a bit of an indicator of quality, but the crema itself is basically CO2, carbon dioxide rising from that bed of coffee. And that is what creates that level, that layer. It's generally just bitter. It's not actually good to drink. So it's more like you should be getting that, but don't. I've had some really, really good espresso, usually done slightly differently. I mean, like sort of as to drink by itself, that did not have a lot of crema. So it's not the only indicator. Don't get too hung up on that. Mostly it tells you your coffee is in the right range of freshness. So if you run really fresh coffee, you'll get these really thick crema that's almost like clumpy, and it's actually sort of hard to pour on. If you're getting, so you can sort of use that to know you're hitting your right window, where like you have a layer of it, it's solid, but it's not like a huge pillow on top of your shot. So espresso is, so when I'm doing espresso, I'm basically referring to a shot of espresso, what we pull out of the machine. And that is the foundation of pretty much every drink on the cafe menu, from espresso up through lattes. We're starting with that shot. So I think like the most important skill for a barista is being able to taste espresso and know which variables, what you need to change to get a better tasting shot. So I'm going to refer a lot to tasting. It's really, really important. Almost every new barista that we train at some point asks if there's an easier way to do it than just drinking espresso, because they don't want to drink espresso.
Can we just do latte art?
Right, yeah, they want to get to the latte art and like, you know, do that part. But like, if you want to excel as a barista, there is no shortcut to drinking a lot of espresso. You don't have to, don't drink the whole shot, please. Don't like, it's not like you have to be chugging double shots of espresso all day. Just you know, taste it, and you know, you can dump it then.
I also will add that even if you don't like prefer espresso as like the thing you like to drink, you can still learn to taste it.
Yeah,
without
it's also
like
not
it
about,
being your go-to beverage.
Right. It's not like you have to actually, that's all you drink. So, to walk through a shot, we have our grinder on the side. You put your portafilter in. And so this is where, so like at Shepherd's Cup, we have our scale down. This is actually when we were just starting. You can see the windows are taped up, and it's so this is not our setup we're running with. You can maybe see on this one a little more. We have like 2 scales that are labeled as tampers down here. So I'll take my portafilter from the group head. I'll put it on the scale. I'll tare it. I'll put it in the, like most espresso grinders have sort of a fork that'll hold the portafilter in when you put it in. So it will grind out the dose. And a lot of grinders are set, these are set by time. So I have like, it'll run for a certain amount of time. And basically you just adjust that to where you're getting out about what you want. So in our case, we want 19 grams out. So I'll grind it, put it back on my scale, double check that I'm within 0.2 of a gram, so like 18.8 to 19.2 grams. If I'm within that range, I take my tamper and I tamp it, which I believe I have some section on that. So tamping, when we've heard like the tamper and the tamping is another very, like, you don't really use that word otherwise. So basically, we're creating a bed of coffee that is even, and evenness is what we're aiming for here. For a while, people talked about, 30 pounds of pressure, 10 pounds of pressure. It is less about how much weight you put on and much more about consistency and evenness. Generally, what is the enemy of your espresso shots is unevenness of extraction, not high, low. There's a lot of ways you can make good espresso. If something is going wrong and it doesn't taste good, it's probably more either you have like clumping from the grinder in your puck, or you tamped crookedly. If you tamp crooked, that water is going to come through at 9 bars of pressure is what most machines are manufactured to produce. That is a pump measurement, so it's basically once that water, it'll put the water into your system at 9 bars of pressure, but when it reaches that bed of coffee, the actual pressure you're producing, what you're actually going to produce that shot, is determined by your bed of coffee. So the functional pressure is, if you did something uneven, it's going to find the low point, and it's going to run to the path of least resistance, and all of your water in that shot is going to run through that half of your grounds. So on this side of the puck, your coffee is washed out, and that's what your coffee is running through, so you're getting sort of those sour, under-extracted notes, while your other half of your puck still has a lot of good coffee solids in that just never end up anywhere. So that's getting a good grinder is arguably more important than your espresso machine. A great grinder and a mid-range espresso machine is much better than a great espresso machine and a mid-range grinder. So I definitely encourage people to spend on that, because any sort of clumping in there will result in bad flavors. So you tamp, put it back in the group head, hit your button or turn your paddle
Toggle
in
your
this
switch,
case,
whatever.
whatever starts your water flow at that pressure. And then we are also pulling onto, you can sort of see the shot glass sitting on a scale below the group head. So we're weighing that out too. We're not using automatic. I know a lot of you probably will. I don't think there's a great substitute for this. I think any variation from this system is a compromise, and sometimes you have to do that. You have to figure out what works for your system, so I'm not going to say you have to do it this way. But this is really the only way for an entire team to know that they're getting the same results shot to shot, day to day, team member to team member. So we're weighing our dose, and then we're weighing our yield. So most of the time we're aiming for like 47 grams of yield. So that's going to be what's sitting in that shot glass. So when I get to about 45 grams, I shut it off, a little bit runs out, and that's what I'm sort of aiming for. Time is another thing. A lot of baristas get hung up on time. They're like, I know like a lot of shops will be like, oh, well, we were told we have to dump that shot because it ran in 30 seconds instead of, we're told like 25 was the right time, 25 seconds. Time is an indicator. It's not what's actually happening to the coffee, which probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but like in other words, a shot isn't necessarily good because it ran in 20 seconds versus 30 seconds versus 35. It's more learning where your espresso is best at with your setup and adapting that. So time is an easy thing to track shot to shot. This machine, if you see the little things above the group head, there's some shot timers. So as soon as I start the shot, it'll start a second counter. So I'll watch that through the day, and we'll write down a time range of like 5 seconds on our grinder. You can sort of see what we have written there. So I have like 19 in, 47 out in, I think that's 23 to 27 seconds. And so that, as if, like on the shift change and the next barista coming in, if they're suddenly getting shots at 32 seconds, they know something must have changed and they should taste again. But always make adjustments on taste. Never like, oh, that's not within our numbers. The numbers are indicating your sweet spot of espresso, nothing else. They're not giving you good quality. So yeah, again, just taste it.
And those numbers are what you're coming up with in the morning when you come in and dial in. You're tasting the shot, and you're like, okay, it tasted good at, this dose, this yield, this time frame. That was a good shot. And so then for the rest of the day, those numbers are, if they're within that range, you have a pretty good idea that this shot is also a good shot.
Yeah, and
you
ideally,
can't taste every shot you serve.
Ideally with a good, right. Ideally with a good setup and good coffee, you shouldn't be dealing with a whole lot of variation. Once you find where you're at, we vary by like anywhere from 23 to 30 seconds. It can change in there, and then like from 45 to 49 grams for yield. And then, so what you usually see for espresso is, they call it an espresso recipe. It's basically dose, yield, and time, which is why we're writing those numbers up there. And so dose is your foundation. Dose, you should be finding what you want and never changing that, just so you have one less variable to worry about. So we picked 19, and basically what you're doing for your dose is finding when how big of a shot do you want? Are you going to mostly be doing lattes? You might want to do like a larger shot. So like most of the time you'll see like 18 to 20 grams listed as sort of the range for like specialty coffee shops are usually doing somewhere in there. So if you're going to be doing like small drinks and a lot of espresso shots, maybe do 18 in, because you're using less coffee than if you're doing bigger drinks, do a larger dose. But whatever you pick for that, lock that in and don't change it. So we're never changing from 19 grams at Shepherd's Cup, because once you start changing that, you open up a whole other field of decisions you have to make every day and every shift. So that's the basis of your recipe. And then you're taking yield. So the simple way to talk about this, and there's a lot of nuance to this, but yield I would use for small adjustments. And then grind size, which is how you're affecting your time, because like I say, we're not changing anything based on it ran in 22 seconds versus 28. But to adjust time, we're adjusting the grind size. So if we want it to take longer or be stronger tasting, which is the general rule, then we'll grind finer, because it'll take longer for water to run through fine coffee versus coarse coffee. So grind size for larger adjustments, if you're way off on taste, then you adjust grind. If you're close to what you want and not quite there, change your yield out by like a gram or two at a time. So if I come in the next morning, I'm aiming for 19 and 47. I try it, and it's just a little like, if it's like weak or sort of sour or like too bright, I know I probably went too far. So if I bring that back to 45 grams, I'm essentially making that shot stronger and making the ratio of like coffee grounds, because my ratio would come down then, since 45 divided by 19 is different than 47 divided by 19. So if I bring my ratio down, I'm making a stronger shot of espresso, which will have more body, more strength. If it's bitter, harsh, you get a sort of drying taste in the back of your throat. So a lot of things, also don't get hung up on trying to identify like flavor. If you're starting out in espresso, don't try to pick out fruit notes. Which flavors are you tasting? Is the acidity lemon or orange? Like, yeah, it's not helpful. Think mostly about feel. How does it sit on your tongue? Does it go evenly, back to front? Or do you get spots where like, wow, that was like sharp there, and now it's like dull across the front? We sort of know our tongues have areas of taste buds of sweet, sour, so how we taste something. So a good espresso shot should be even. It should feel heavier than a coffee. You should be able to actually sort of feel the espresso. And then as you drink it, pay really close attention to like the aftertaste. If you need to go for a glass of water right away, it's like drying, then you're probably too strong. And so in our diagram here, if I'm at 47 and it tastes like that, I might try to go to 49 grams an hour, basically running more water through, which should get me a little more brightness, a little more flavor at the expense of body. So you're sort of weighing, and like I say, there's so much more in between there, but basically you're weighing strength and body against flavor. The more complex aromatic parts of the espresso will come out later in the shot.
We have kind of a quick troubleshooting. So the process of like dialing in a shot and some troubleshooting by taste tips are in your handouts. It's a lot to explain in a class, so what you're gonna have to do is practice, and hopefully we gave you some tools to do that.
Yeah. Is there anything else you need to do on that one? Or?
Okay, so we're gonna move into milk steaming, which, how do you teach this other than hands-on? So our top recommendation for you guys is gonna be go on YouTube and look up videos of how to steam and how to pour latte art. That's gonna be your best bet. In our resources, we have a couple YouTube channels we recommend. But we'll just run through the basics really quickly. So you're gonna have your steam pitcher of milk. Before you steam it, you're gonna briefly purge the steam wand because some water condensation can get trapped in there. You wanna place, to start out, you're gonna place the steam wand tip just below the surface of the milk, and you're kinda gonna ease onto the steam if you can, if you don't have one that just like turns it on all the way on right away. So you kinda get your milk swirling, get a feel for it. So then there's the stretching phase, which is where you're introducing air into the milk and creating a foam. So that's going to increase the milk volume and kind of lower your pitcher. This is the part where you're creating the foam, so how long you keep your steam wand tip at the surface of the milk, or just below the surface, is going to determine how thick, how foamy your milk is. And for doing like lattes and the traditional menu drinks, we're going for you want a good micro foam, not super thin, not super thick. It should kind of look shiny on the top when you're done, kind of like wet paint is how I've heard it described. And it should be thick enough to pour latte art, but not so thick that is like, when you pour it, you've got clumps falling out of like marshmallowy, fluffy stuff. So that's what you're building the foam at first. Then as you build your foam a little bit, you lower the wand deeper into the milk and get a good swirling motion going. That helps to texture it and get all of that integrated, so that it's a nice even consistency. You're heating the milk to 140, 160 degrees. When you get, that's the sweet spot where the sugars of the milk can really shine. And you have a good sweet milk to work with. Once you go beyond that, you start breaking down sugars and proteins and scalding the milk, and the taste is very different and not as ideal. After you steam your milk, you want to wipe down the steam wand and give it a quick purge again. Sometimes you might need to swirl the milk pitcher a little bit, maybe give it a tap if there were some larger bubbles that you want to, that's called polishing. It's kind of smooth it over.
Please wipe down the steam wand.
Yeah.
I'm very strict on people with it. Just training someone recently, and just like every time, it's like, nope, don't pour it. Wipe it down first.
So a lot of people get hung up on focusing on latte art as a mark of quality, and it certainly can indicate skill and quality. But the really important thing is, as you're creating a drink, is that you have a really good espresso shot, and you have really nice milk with good texture, good temperature. When your components are good, you can't make a bad drink. So if you can pour latte art, great, and if not, serve the drink that you made with confidence, knowing that the components that you put into it are good. Latte art comes with a lot of practice and a lot of watching YouTube videos and a lot of trial and error. So then to bring this all together, we've talked about espresso and steaming milk. We're going to go into a really quick overview of a traditional espresso drink menu. So we encourage cafes to stick to this traditional menu so that we can create a standard that people who go into cafes like ours can learn what to expect when they walk in. This is kind of based on the traditional Italian menu. That's the closest thing we have to a standard. And so we encourage shops to stick with a traditional menu for just the sake of creating consistency, helping people know what to expect, and educating them on coffee. So we're going to start with espresso. I'll let you guys figure out what's what here. I feel like it's obvious. We're starting with the smallest one, working our way up. So we're starting with espresso, a great beverage on its own, but also the base of everything that we're making, all of these drinks that we're making. So next up, we're going to have a macchiato, which is a 2-ounce drink. Macchiato basically means espresso marked with milk. You want an espresso shot, just a little bit of milk and milk foam to kind of sweeten it a tiny bit, make it a little more drinkable. Brace yourself, because Starbucks has ruined this one for everyone. And then next we've got a cortado. That drink is about 4 ounces, and we're going for roughly equal parts espresso and steamed milk. That's probably our personal favorite, the one that we drink the most. It's got a good strong espresso flavor and just enough of milk to give it some sweetness and make it just really enjoyable. Cappuccino, there's some variation with cappuccino. It might be 6 ounces, might be 8 ounces, anything in that range really is fine. Don't get hung up on you might come across a like rule of thirds where it's 1/3 espresso, 1/3 steamed milk, and 1/3 milk foam, or the milk foam needs to be a certain thickness. What we do and how we train people is really the cappuccino is more about the size of the drink, the strength of the drink. It's more about the amount of milk you're adding, and so we really steam similar to a latte and don't make a big deal about differentiating that a lot. And then a latte is typically 12 ounces. A lot of shops will offer a 16 ounce. This is the sweeter, more accessible drink. Maybe if someone comes in, they're not as familiar with coffee, this is a great recommendation for them to start. And this is also the one that a lot of times people will be adding flavored sweeteners, caramel, vanilla, whatever. One drink that we don't have pictured up there is an Americano. That is an espresso shot with hot water added to dilute it basically to the same strength as drip coffee. So that's a quick rundown of our menu. We have 2 minutes. Do we dare?
Question or maybe I'll just run through a couple like workflow tips I thought of while walking through there, because we'll get about halfway through one question.
We're gonna get lost in the weeds if we don't have questions.
So a couple things I thought of. I said about wiping down your steam wand. I've rebuilt espresso machines. I've worked some on like refurbishing. Generally, what you see in an old espresso machine is one side is completely worn out and the other side is like new. So as you're working on a workflow, generally there's going to be a side that people prefer, often the side towards the grinder. So as you're learning, so this is easiest to do if you're new and you're learning, work through alternate sides of group heads. Like you pull one shot from this side, take the next one from that side. Use both group heads, use both steam wands. You'll prefer, especially a steam wand, almost everyone prefers a certain side depending on left or right-handed, how it angles. Use both of them and keep the steam wands wiped down. Clean your group heads every day. It's not hard to find the process for that, where you basically run the cleaner through. It doesn't take that long, and your machine will last a lot longer. An espresso machine lasts a lifetime if it's properly taken care of. You just have to replace cheap gasket parts. It shouldn't be, So take care of your equipment. I think what else I was going to talk about. On our resources, I really do recommend those. So on where it says YouTube channels, we have James Hoffman's Understanding Espresso. I think it's a 6-part series breaking down by like dose, yield, where he explains all these terms. I think they're each about 20 minutes. It's very in-depth. James Hoffman in general is a resource I pretty much trust implicitly. I'll pretty much I've never seen him say something I didn't agree with. Also, Lance Hedrick is doing a coffee tutorial. He doesn't have a title for it, but if you look up the best coffee tutorial, it'll be part 1, and now there's a part 2 and part 3. And essentially what he's doing is half-hour segments working through what the SCA Barista Foundations course is. So very helpful for something you can just get free online. Otherwise, resources, we have an Amazon link to accessories, the tamper that we use, the scales, that sort of stuff. So it's an Amazon list you can go to. For training, we do this at Shepherd's Cup. I have some info, I believe, in your handouts for contacting us. Also, Extend, I'm sure you'll have info about that at some point. There's the foundations, Barista Foundations now it is, I think, is a great course for 2-day event working at the foundations of espresso. Use the resources available. Mm-hmm. We would love to work with you. Extend loves to work with you. Maybe we'll be the same thing at some point. I don't know.
And if anyone has burning questions, you want to ask about coffee nerd stuff or practical questions, we're at the Shepherd's Cup booth. We're here the rest of the day, so find us, talk to us. We love to talk to people about coffee.
We never get tired of talking about coffee.